Would you join your hearts with mine in prayer? God of empty tombs, oil the hinges of our hearts' doors, that they may swing easily open to welcome you. Amen. Thank God, Christmas, Easter. Season. Thank God Easter came early this year. Yes, it means that the crocus are just starting to poke their heads up through the soil, and they're clustered together as if to defend against the March chill. And yes, it may mean that our Easter finery still feels a little out of season. But no matter, we need Easter this year. The sooner, the better. I didn't realize this at first. It was my Chicago friend who connected the dots for me, who cast the full picture, unfurled it as we sat at the dining room table sipping tea. Connecticut's been in the news a lot lately, she said. A major snow event, Storm Sandy, and a heart-rending tragedy now known simply as Newtown. My husband says sometimes Lent is 40 days. Sometimes it's longer. Sometimes we find ourselves wandering through the wilderness for months, battered by storms, meteorological or financial or emotional, washed up on the shores of abuse or grief, wrung out by a life that demands too much of us, by trials that threaten to overwhelm. A foreclosure notice, a cancer diagnosis, the death of a loved one. This winter has taken its toll on many of us. And like dried out bulbs left too long in the dark, we could use a little sun, a little warmth, a few rays of light to lead us out and green our pale and tender shoots. We could use a little resurrection hope. The question is, how will we recognize it when it comes? The disciples didn't, at least not at first. And why would they? Their world had been turned upside down, their hearts torn in two along with the temple curtain. Jesus, the one they called the Messiah, had been executed by the Roman state. Jesus, their rabbi, the one who spoke in ways so powerful and so tender, the one who acted in ways so unorthodox and so unexpected, the one who loved them so unconditionally, loved them all, loved Judas, who handed him over to the authorities, loved Peter, who insisted that he would never abandon Jesus, only to turn around and insist that he'd never even met the man, loved Mary, a woman, and therefore disregarded by most, but welcomed into this rabbi's inner circle. He had loved them all, treated them as equals, beloved by God, deserving of dignity. And he insisted that they love one another the same way. Now he was dead. And there was nothing left but to bury the body. It was Mary who went out alone that morning. And though the first rays of sun reached out across the landscape, turning the world to lavender and rose, she did not notice. Wrapped up in her own grief, she went on her way until she came to the tomb and found the stone rolled away. That she did see. And so she ran to tell the others. They ran back together. Peter and another disciple with Mary close on their heels ran at first to defend Jesus' body. Ran because they believed that the tomb had been robbed. Ran also because they hoped somewhere in the recesses of their broken heart that that empty tomb might mean something more. Because we always hope that death is just a bad dream. We hope, but we know better, don't we? We can't undo death. Death is the one sure thing, death and taxes, right? For some, death is the only future that can be imagined. Father Greg Boyle is a Jesuit priest who serves in South Central LA. He works with young men and women who have grown up in the most death-dealing circumstances, trapped in cycles of poverty and abuse and gun violence, raised by mothers who are either frightened or frightening. And those young people, they plan their own funerals. Because what else do they have to plan? Father Doyle says that those young people suffer from a lethal absence of hope. And that phrase, it's been rattling around in my brain ever since I heard him say it, a lethal absence of hope. Because I suspect that those kids on the streets in LA are not the only ones to experience that lethal absence of hope. To get stuck in the tombs, as it were, with their back to the door, unable to find a way out. I suspect that we all know something of what it's like to get trapped in the tombs. Which is why the next part of this story is so amazing. Mary stands looking in to the darkened tomb, and she weeps, completely undone. Peter and the other disciple, they have left the scene, and to the angels. Mary, they say to her, why are you weeping? And it seems an odd question given the circumstances, given that they are standing there with the burial wraps lying at their feet, and you can hear the exasperation in Mary's voice. Can't you see? Don't you know? He's not here. They've taken away my Lord, and I don't know where they have laid him. And then she turns around. Now imagine, she's been looking into that dark tomb. And so when she turns and looks into the sunrise, she is blinded for a moment by the light. And the figure who is standing nearby, he's backlit. his expression hard to discern. She looks, he waits. It's like that, I think, when we first encounter resurrection hope. The bright light surprises us, and we find ourselves rubbing our eyes, shading them, maybe even backing up into the gloom again. Jesus waits. Waits for Mary to regain her sight. She blinks, and then he calls her name. Mary. And all the pieces fall into place. Now, maybe it was that question he asked, "Whom are you looking for?" that reminded her of the very first question he asked of the very first disciples back when he called them to follow. Or maybe in that moment she remembered something that Jesus said in the upper room right after he washed their feet. And he said, "You have sorrow now, but I will see you again, and your hearts will rejoice, and no one will take the joy from you." Well, maybe it was just the way he spoke her name, as if she mattered, as if she was deserving of dignity. Had anyone else ever loved her like that? Mary